is really, I met him when I went to Arizona to speak at an event. And I was there to talk about magic and the out of body experience and things like that. And some of the people I met, Bryce is one of those people, Fysick in the YouTube chat. Some of the people that I met there changed my life. Like I really found a family of friends there, to be honest with you. And now he's one of my best friends and has one of the most profound stories that I'd like to share with you. I don't know that we'll be able to share all of it tonight, but we're going to try to share some of it. And I think that it's a real honor to have him on the show. Hadn't had him on the show in a long time. So, Chris, you still there? You still there, brother? Can you hear me?
I'm still here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you, man. I hear you. Sometimes when people tap into things and things start happening to us in our lives, we question that, right? And I think that kind of happened to you, didn't it? Like some things started happening to you that seemed like massive synchronicities or things that just didn't seem real in your own personal field of consciousness. And, you know, I'll let you tell the story, but I do kind of want to know how tough was it to come to terms with. But tell us what happened first in the beginning, where it kind of started.
Okay. It has taken nearly a decade to come to terms with everything. And a lot has changed even since I met you in 2022. So it's been a few years even since we met. This all really started unfolding in my life in a big way in 2016. Specifically in August, I was hanging out with my daughter one morning. I picked her up from school. She was in the first grade, about 7 years old. And I received a letter from the school that said she'd qualified for the Center for Academically Talented Students. The acronym was spelled out CATS. The CATS program.
Yeah.
And they provided me with an interview list of questions that I was going to have to ask my daughter. So I was sitting in the truck with my daughter, and I asked her the first question, and I said, you know, we'll do one question a week and get this all squared away so that way you're ready to go for your interview. And so I proceeded to ask her this question, which was, if you could have somebody come to your classroom from the past or the present to teach you something, who would it be and why? Mind you, my daughter's 7 years old, and she's sitting there on her iPad, not looking at me. If I could go back in time, you know, I would have taken that iPad away, because it seemed like, you know, that's a whole other story. But anyways, she says to me, Dad, I think I'd like Steve to come to the classroom and teach us how to make the world a better place with technology. And I looked at her in shock, like what? Like, first of all, I want her to say, you, Dad. But then I'm like, Steve who? Steve Jobs? And she says, yeah, Dad, Steve Jobs. And I said, how the heck do you know who Steve Jobs is? And she says to me, well, my teacher, Miss Christina, said that he's the one that created the iPad and the iPhone. So I had this jealous moment where like I said, I wanted her to say you, Dad, but she said Steve Jobs. So I thought, well, let me figure out how I can be more like Steve Jobs. You know, this guy changed the world. I want to change the world. I had this moment where I wanted to be bigger. I wanted to be bigger so that my daughter could think of me that way. So I was sort of geeking out on Ancient Aliens at the time, and I had remembered this episode that Steve Jobs, basically the whole episode was on Steve Jobs. So I watched that episode, and what I took from it was that he read these two books that changed his life. So I went right to the bookstore, Barnes & Noble, and bought one of the books that was on the shelf, Cosmic Consciousness. Uh-huh. And then I ordered the other one because it wasn't in the store, Be Here Now. Be Here Now is by Ram Dass, Cosmic Consciousness by Richard Burke.
Yeah, I know Be Here Now. I'm familiar with that. That's cool. Okay.
So I got through Be Here Now like in a week, and I wasn't really into reading books at the time at all. I didn't own books, but this book was really intriguing. I couldn't stop turning the pages. And when I closed the book, towards the end, it kind of summarizes itself. It says, whether you are a Christian, a Buddhist, a Hindu, an atheist, or whether you just do drugs, what you should do is learn how to meditate. And so in this moment, I thought, okay, I need to learn meditation. And I will never forget the moment. I'm sitting there on the couch, and I look up from my book, and right in front of me is my to-do calendar, because I have a habit of making a calendar. Right now, I got a calendar up. It's important for me to stay on track. So I look at my calendar, and I see that in 2 weeks, I have an appointment at the Veterans Administration Hospital for my annual checkup. And I know that my doctor, Dr. P, he has this program called the Mind, Body, Soul Technique, and he's real big on it. And I knew he would be happy to teach me meditation. So I went to my annual checkup, and I told him, as he's, just doing his thing, I said, hey, Doc, I want to learn meditation. And just like I thought, he got real excited. He looked at his nurse, and he said, nurse, set up a 1-hour appointment with Mr. Martinez next week for Mind, Body, Soul. So
Wow.
A week later, I go into his office, and he sits me down, Joe, and he teaches me transcendental meditation right there in his office. He had me empty my pockets. He taught me this breathing technique, deep belly breath, in through the nose, out through the mouth, holding it on the out breath. He taught me how to clear my mind with a mantra. We used a generic one. It was just 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, 3, 2, 1. I did this breathing technique, and he guided me through it for like the first 15 minutes. And I would think of other things and then come back to my mantra. But after about 15 minutes, I was gone, like couldn't feel my chair anymore. I was like out of my body. I was riding, not necessarily riding, but I saw these purple waves. I saw these green orbs. It was very reminiscent of a psychedelic experience. I did acid once in high school. I OD'd on some cough medicine back in the Marine Corps, and I'd seen trails. So this was like the only reference I had. It was like, I'm seeing colors. I couldn't feel my body. I lost sense of time. And then I heard the doctor in the background. He sort of talked me back into my body by having me wiggle my toes. And as soon as he brought me back into full conscious awareness, he said, Chris, I didn't give you any drugs. And it's funny because I was comparing this to a drug experience. And the first thing he said was, I didn't give you any drugs. You can do this anytime you need to. So I was really excited about this process. Went home, and I was already in the habit of jogging a couple times a week. So I would, after my jog, I would sit down in the sun, and I would do this meditation process. And I was doing it for a few weeks straight. And then I started to hear a voice in my head that was telling me a riddle. And I thought for a while maybe it was like a dream, and that I woke up and maybe it was something I dreamt and then it was stuck in my head. It was like an earworm, and I just couldn't get it out for days, this riddle. And I told a couple people, but I just kind of sounded like a nutcase. So
Did
I
you think
stopped
you were
telling
going
people.
crazy? Like at the time?
Yeah, well, it just didn't make sense to anybody. And I just quickly realized, like I told my mom, told my girlfriend, and I told a good buddy of mine, and it just didn't make sense to anybody. So I'll never forget the riddle either. Here's the riddle. The voice in my head said, be still. Choose a place at the head of the city. I will reveal myself to you in the place of your nativity. There you will find a crystal sword. So
That
I
sounds like
really thought I
something.
was losing my mind, dude.
That sounds like something out of the Legend of Zelda too, almost, doesn't it? Right? Like,
It does. It
yeah,
sounded like it just didn't make sense, but I
sure.
couldn't get out of my head, Joe. Like it was
It was
a
there.
message for me. So the first thing I did was let me just try to make sense out of it. Choose a place at the head of the city. So at the time, I'm living in Tucson, Arizona, and the head of the city. I'm thinking, okay, it's got to be like if the city was a body, the head would be at the north side of the city. And when you drive into Tucson from the north, there's a mountain peak up there that looks like a Mexican hat. It's called Sombrero Peak. So I thought, okay, maybe Sombrero Peak is the head of the city because it looks like a big Mexican hat. So I went to the library while my daughter was at school, and I looked up Sombrero Peak on the computer, found a book on the shelf right behind me, this little green book, geology book, pulled it out, started flipping through, and I read that early settlers had called this peak Safford Peak. Sombrero Peak is just a nickname it has that the locals call it. And I had no idea that it was actually called Safford Peak. And this was so mind-blowing because I was born in Safford, Arizona, this tiny little town east of Tucson in southeast Arizona that probably nobody knows about. And the message that I had received said, I will reveal myself to you in the place of your nativity. So me choosing Sombrero Peak and it actually being called Safford Peak started making a whole lot of sense all of a sudden. So
Mm.
I grabbed my phone and I Googled Safford Peak, and this article came up in the Associated Press that was dated September 11th of that year. And the title of this article said, A Still Place in a Turning World. And the beginning of my message said, Be still. So I was sort of tripping out, and I read down through this article, and it described a place out in the desert at the base of this mountain that you can visit and hike a few trails, and there's a labyrinth there, and it's a place. It's 81 acres of land set aside in a trust. It was set aside in 1955 by a World War II veteran. He wanted this place to be preserved and not built upon. And it borders Saguaro National Park, so the backside of it is also protected. So there's a lot of just nothing out there but saguaro cactus. And I also learned reading that geology book that peak is an old petrified volcano. So, anyways, there was a phone number on that article, and I called the number, and this lady answered, and she just said, hello, not business-like at all. She said, hello, and I said, hey, my name's Chris. I'm calling to inquire about your place. And she said, how did you get this number? And I said, well, I just read this article. And she said, oh, well, I had sent that article out to some non-local websites in hopes to get non-local people. We try to keep this place secluded so we don't get a lot of tourists or anybody to know about this place. So I told her, she said, how did you come across the article? And I just told her, like, as crazy as my story sounded, I just told this lady.
You just sold her
She
flat
said,
out,
well,
huh? Yeah.
yeah, I just told her, I just told her everything. And she said, well, you can continue your journey. I have a cottage here that you can rent. She said, I have a nonprofit organization and we rent this cottage. She said, I usually rent it 2 days and weekends. She said, it's like $200 a night. And I was like that. I was so stretched on money at the time. And then there's a cleaning fee and a deposit. It was going to be a lot of money to stay there. And so I said, is there any way you can accommodate a 1-day stay for me? And she said, I'll have to get back to you because I have a regular job and I'll have to see what day works. And so she called me like 3 days later and said, Chris, how will Wednesday, October 12th be? And that's my birthday. That's my 36th birthday.
So
she had no idea that was my birthday.
There's synchronicity
so like,
number 3,
no.
right? 3 or 4. Yeah, for sure.
So I'm like, this is crazy, man. Like, she would choose my birthday of all days. So this is meant to be, right? I'm so stoked. And I called my buddy Albert the night before my birthday on October 11th. And I said, hey, dude, I'm going to go on a hike for my birthday. Will you join me? The last minute I called him, like at 10 o'clock at night. And he said, sure. He shows up at like 5 in the morning with a bottle of water. And we go out there to the mountain. We step off at like 5:30 and onto no trail. And he immediately says, where are we going? And I just pointed to the top of the mountain. I go, we're going up there. And he sort of laughed. He's like, yeah, right. I go, for real, man. And so he says, okay. So we just start hiking off in the desert. He's got shorts on and a tank top. And I've got like my camouflage uniform from back in the day. Got my pack on. I got a bunch of water and I'm ready to go. And we watched the sunrise on the ridge, hiked up about 4 hours into the hills, and sitting down, taking a rest. And I look over at my buddy, and he's pretty exhausted. And he's like, Chris, where the hell are we going, dude? And I'm like, I told you, man, we're going up that hill right there. And
we're going to the highest peak at the top of the top of the highest. Yeah, right.
And this is actually where, see, I didn't tell him anything. I told the lady at the spot, but I didn't tell my buddy Albert anything. So at this point, though, you mentioned it sounded like a Zelda game. Well, my buddy used to play World of Warcraft a lot.
Right.
And so I sort of threw this sort of a jab, but like a joke, trying to lighten the mood.
He was trying to make fun of you about it.
Funny.
Yeah.
But I go, hey man, I'm looking for a crystal sword, bro. Come on, you gotta help me find it. And he was like, whatever, dude. And so we keep hiking. We hit the highest part of the mountain, man. We broke from the north side of the ridge to the south side of the ridge. And then we started running out of water. And we were like, crap, man, where are we? You know, we started getting hot. It's like 90 degrees, blazing sun. And now we're like 2 more hours in, like 6 hours into this hike. And under this Palo Verde tree, there was this big stone. And the light was shining just right. And it was glistening off something. And so I went over there and I dug out of the ground a crystal quartz Native American arrowhead. And I'm holding this thing in my hand. And my friend Albert looks over my shoulder and he's like, it's your crystal sword, dude. It's your crystal sword. And I'm just like jaw-dropped, like, what the? I can't believe this is happening right now. Like, I've never, ever, I mean, it's in southern Arizona. So, you know, maybe people find arrowheads. But I found a quartz.
A quartz arrowhead's a whole different thing,
quartz
though.
Crystal, it's a whole different thing, right? So I'm like tripping out. I took it to this gem and mineral shop that had been in business for 30 years. It's still in business. And I showed the owner, and he had never seen anything like it. We looked online, and you could just find like fake ones. So he gave me a box, told me to take good care of it. And I was like blown away. You know, I was like telling people the story, but then again, I realized I couldn't just go tell anybody this story because they'd look at me like I was crazy. So I stopped telling people.
Mm-hmm.
And I kept hiking at this location, and I kept meditating on it. And like literally on the mountain, I would go out there and I would do this meditation technique that I had learned. I was doing it out there. And then one day I'm coming off the hill, and that caretaker that rented me the cottage, the stay at the cottage was great. Nothing crazy happened. I just stayed there, you know, but the lady that rented me, her name is Amy. she hollered my name. She was like, hey, what are you doing? Like, she didn't holler my name. She hollered at me. She said, hey, what are you doing? And why are you always here? Because I was there constantly, like almost on a daily basis. Probably every day I was there.
You were just you stayed past the time, the past the one day, huh? So she thought you were staying there.
Yeah.
Huh?
She was like, "What are you doing here?" And I told her, I was like, "Hey, it's me, Chris. Remember you rented me your cottage?" And she was like, "Oh yeah, I remember you, of course." And she said, "How was your journey?" And I told her that I found a mountain lion cave. I didn't tell her about the arrowhead. Because we found a mountain lion cave up there, which is pretty cool, and I just told her I had a good time, and then she just broke down, started crying right next to me, and man. I was like, "What the hell is going on?" And so I put my hand on her and I said, "Amy, what's wrong?" And she said, "Chris," she said, I got to get out of this place." She said, the board won't help me leave. She said, "My husband just died in August, so." You know, this same year, so just a couple months ago, she said, "My husband just died. He was 34, and he went up into the attic to spray for bugs, and he came down coughing, and he got sick, and he developed fast onset leukemia, and he died within a month."
Damn.
And she said that they planned on living out their dreams, their rest of their lives out there. And that every day that she's there, it's like this terrible reminder of what happened. And she said that she has no place to go and that the board won't help her relocate or find anybody else to help her to take care of this place. And so I just said, "I'll do it." And she said, "Really?" I said, "Yeah, I own my own business. I can do it. You know, I love this place. I'd be happy to take care of it." And so she took my information down, and within a month, I think it was like the 1st of December, or that first week in December, I was in an interview with the whole board to be the next caretaker, the 4th caretaker of this place.
Just for a second, to keep in mind, all of this started from you doing meditations. Think about that. Like, that's how it started, meditating. And then you just started listening to this voice and followed your heart and this voice. And now it's like synchronicity, you know? When you say board, though, were they like a big company, I guess, I'm assuming, or was it a big organization? Unless I missed that part.
Right. So since it's a land set aside in trust, there's a board that runs the property. Like there's a board that decides, you know, they take in money because they rent this cottage, and that have to use that money to like pay utilities. You know, they have to manage things that go like land maintenance.
Okay. So you're sitting in front of them talking to these people. That's so crazy. So now you're sitting in front of them talking to them.
Yeah, I'm sitting at one end of the table. You know, there's like 4 people on the left side of the table, 4 people on the right side of the table, and then 2 people at the other end. The 2 people at the other end is the president and the president's husband. And they were former caretakers for 30 years at that property. So they have they love that place. So they want to know who the heck is going to be the next caretaker. The lady sitting right next to me on the left, she's been on the board since 55. And so the one lady sitting next to me who'd been on the board forever, she said, "Chris, what do you know about this place?" And I said, "Just what I've seen. What I've read." But did you tell the board more?
Did you tell the board your story though? I would have been really hesitant. No, I wouldn't have told them either. That would have been tough. Yeah.
Yeah, that would have been probably a disqualifier. I'll tell you what, because I think they wanted to make sure I didn't know too much, and that's why they're asking me these questions. because I did withhold some information. Because after I found that Native American arrowhead, I was excited to tell people. And so I'll remind, I'm an HVAC technician, so I visit people regularly. On an average, every year I go into about 1,000 homes. And so one particular home, I was leaving a house, and this lady tried to offer me to take a Bible home because she had a bunch of them, needed to give them away. And I didn't have a problem taking a Bible, but I said, sure, I'll take a Bible if you let me tell you a story. So I sat down and I told her this whole crazy story that I've just told you. And the husband got so excited, and he was an elderly man who could barely move. He got so excited, and he told me that he used to work out there before they had any houses or there was any development. He used to work as a ranch hand, and he would go find cattle that would get off property. And so he gets up and starts animating like a longhorned bull lifting up barbed wire with its horns. And he's like, they would lift up the barbed wire with their horns like this. And he's excited about telling me this story about how he would go out in that area and he would find the brands on these cattle and take them back to whatever ranch they belonged to. He said, Chris, you could hear wagon wheels rolling out there in rocks that weren't there. You could hear Indian drums out in the hills that weren't there. He said, Chris, that's a weird place. So in that moment when that lady on the board asked me what I knew about this place, I didn't tell her any of that stuff. But what she told me reminded me about what that man said, because she said, well, Chris, do you know who Stephen Hawking is? And I'm like, yeah, of course I know who Stephen Hawking is. He said, well, he came out here in the 1960s and says that this place has wormholes. And so I connected wormholes to what that old man had said about hearing sounds from the past. So I was like, okay, this is a trip, right? So then the lady, the president, who was, like I said, a caretaker for over 30 years, she said, Chris, we got one last question for you. She said, are you afraid of the dark? And I said, no, ma'am, I was in the Marine Corps. I'm not afraid of anything. Why would you even ask me that question? She said, well, you know how dark it gets out here, Chris. Once the sun goes down, there's no lights. She said, and one of your main responsibilities is to close the gate to the property by sunset and to open it up at sunrise. She said, but to walk from this house to that gate is a quarter mile.
And it's
and
dark.
If you are afraid of the dark,
Yeah.
she said, that could be a real problem. And I just sort of laughed it off. Like, of course I'm not going to be afraid of the dark. So I got the keys. I moved in, living in a house that had 4 bedrooms. There was no rent I had to pay, no utilities I had to pay. I was like living it up. I was so excited, so stoked to be doing this on that property. I felt like, what's next? Well, there was a little bit more responsibility than I had realized. There was a chapel up on the hill that I hadn't ever noticed before, and it's rented out for weddings and memorial services, and I had this responsibility to sweep it up, book it out, take payments, and that's part of how they keep the utilities on. So no big deal.
Dude, this is crazy. So you went from meditating to finding all of these synchronicities in this arrowhead, and now you're taking care of this cabin after you talked to a board of directors or whatever. How long did all of this, just before we continue the story, like how long of a period did all of this like happen in?
Okay, so I was sitting with my daughter in August 2016, and then by September, it was October, somewhere between September 15th and October 1st of that same year.
Yeah, I figured so.
That's when all that shit happened. And then December, I got the keys to the place.
This is crazy.
So I had moved in before Christmas. I got to spend my first Christmas at that spot.
So, but you were meditating daily. Did you hear any more voices or anything after that?
Yes. It
I don't want
seemed
to
like,
jump. Don't let me jump. Jump ahead. Go ahead and continue. Though I don't want to get you off kilter.
it seems like not a big deal, but it should be a kind of a big deal. But yeah, I was hearing other voices. Like I heard a voice say my name one time while I was in my room after this meditation. So it's I started hearing voices, dude, and I heard a voice say my name, Chris. I heard a voice say, as weird as it sounds, I heard a voice say Leonidas. I heard, but then one day I said Gabriel just for no reason, and then another time, all this was within that period. Like I opened up my third eye. What I've come to understand.
Right.
Because there's a lot of pressure that builds up right between my eyes when I go into this meditation. It's like immediate pressure right there between my eyes. Pretty certain that's what people will say. That's the explanation. That's what's happening here.
That's what. Yeah. Sure.
So I'm taking care of this place. There's right by the front door. There's a vent. There's no air conditioning on the house, just a furnace and a swamp cooler, like evaporative cooler that has cooler pads and water that goes through them. It's pretty ghetto anyway, but that vent right by the door, it was always like a stench right there. But this property is out there in the desert, and in HVAC, I find dead rats all the time in air conditioning condensers. Pack rats are notorious in the desert. They just crawl in someplace and they die, and they stink. So I thought for sure there was like a dead rat in that return vent on the floor that went to the furnace. And so I hired a duct cleaner to search and clean the vents. And this dude, he went up in the attic, and then he came down and he asked me if I had followed him in there. And I said, no, why? And he said, I swear you went up there with me. He said, it freaked me out. And I didn't tell him that Amy's husband died up there.
Right.
But that was already weird. So the smell went away. He cleaned the vents. He didn't find any rats or anything. Then I hired a exterminator. They didn't find any rats. So the smell came back, would come and go. So I put an air freshener right there because there's a plug and outlet right there and a plant. I just put the air freshener. It's right by the front door. So I'm making coffee in the kitchen about 10 o'clock in the morning. And I look over to the front door. The wooden door is open. The screen door is closed. And I see this 7 foot tall, 3 foot wide, translucent shadow figure entering through the door. And then it starts moving through the living room towards me into the kitchen. And then it goes into this other back room. And I just froze and followed it with my eyes and head. And as soon as it left the room, I peeked around the corner to see if I could see it, and it was gone. I didn't panic. I just finished making coffee because I didn't really know what else to do. So about a week went by, and I was watching TV in that area of the living room right by the front door, and I felt nauseated. for no reason, and like I couldn't shake it. It was at nighttime, so went outside, breathed it out, and no big deal. And about a week later, something else happened, and at this time, I couldn't shake it. I'm sitting right there by the front door. I put a desk right there because it's real nice. You put the door open and the breeze comes in. So now, time frame, Joe, we're looking at about March. I'm looking at about March. Now it's 2017. Okay. So the weather in Tucson, Arizona, it's not freezing at all. It's also not really hot yet. It's nice out. But all of a sudden, this freezing cold air comes in from outside, and it enters my bones. And I know air temperature, again, because I'm an HVAC tech. I know what freezing air is. This was freezing air. My bones started to hurt. So I pushed myself back from the desk, stood up off of my chair, and I start talking shit to this entity that I can't see, but I know that there's an entity in my bones, dude. It's in my body. And so I say to it, leave me the hell alone. I'm cursing, using the F-bomb. I'm mad. Leave me the F alone. This is my place. Get out. You leave my kids alone. I start, and while I'm talking shit, all the muscles in my body start cramping up. My bones are in pain. It's like the worst Charlie horses. I couldn't even move from the spot anymore in the house. I'm standing there just frozen. Once it released me, I ran out to the front because for some reason I remembered in that moment that I didn't, lock the gate to the front door. Again, this was like part of my job was to close that gate at sunset, but here it's like 10 or 11 at night, and I've been busy on the computer responding to emails, and now I'm like, what just happened to me? So I go out there to the front gate, and there's two big gates. So you got to pull this one, and then you got to pull this one, and then you wrap the chain. And right when I'm going to wrap the chain, I look over to the left, and I see a 4-foot tall, dark entity with the oblong head, long, skinny, gangly arms, long, skinny fingers, and it, like, as soon as it notices it, it retracts its arm, hides behind the retainer wall. I was so scared that I sprinted back this quarter mile to the house, kicked open the front door with my foot, grabbed my truck keys, got into my truck, and then I drove back to that front gate, had to get out of the truck, throw open the gate again, drive through the gate, got out of my truck, and so I had to go close the gate again. So I pull this gate, wrap the chain, and I'm getting ready to lock the lock, and I said aloud, Jesus Christ, protect me. And right when I said that, I heard this growl in my right ear, like this unearthly demonic growl in my right ear. It brought tears to my eyes. Got in my truck, and I drove off. And I never stayed the night there again. I kept going back because I had to take care of this place. I didn't tell anybody what happened because I didn't want to lose the spot at first.
Sure. Yeah.
And I had to do this Easter sunrise mass that was coming up in a month. And so I really wanted to do that before I made any big moves. And so I'm getting ready for this Easter sunrise mass. And the Thursday before, so it's like April, the middle of April or something now, 2017. The Thursday before, I'm in the living room in that same area, and all of a sudden, the smell comes back, and my stomach starts to turn in a knot. And it feels like someone's twisting my insides, because, and I hate to be graphic, but it feels like my asshole, my nuts, and my guts are all like getting twisted in this knot. I collapsed on the ground.
Man,
I couldn't move. I couldn't move, dude. I called my mom. She came over. I hobbled into her car. She took me to the emergency room, and I was like a fish out of water in the emergency room. And they sedated me. They ran these tests, and they said nothing was wrong with me, that I was dehydrated. And I was like, this is bullshit. So
Yeah,
stuff.
you went to the Marine Corps. You've been dehydrated before, right?
Yeah. Yeah, this was something way different.
Yeah.
So I went through with the Easter sunrise mass. It was a complete success. My mom helped me out. And then I wrote a letter to the board, and I told them that I didn't want to be the caretaker anymore. So they actually shut it down for a while, because without a caretaker, they couldn't have anybody on the spot. So I have to interject and say there's a part of the story that we're going to back up. I'm a coach. Okay. I coach young adults. And meanwhile, I wouldn't say probably like in February, one of my athletes had asked me to do some work so he could earn some extra money. And this chapel that I mentioned that was up on the hill had this back room that was full of rat shit. And I just always wanted to clean it, but it was such a large task that I needed help. So I figured, okay, me and this kid are going to strap on boots and masks and gloves, and we're going to go clean this back room. So we cleaned out this back room with this chapel, and we unearthed like 6 boxes of books from the late 1800s to the like 1930s, and they're all occult magic topics. Like,
in a chapel?
There's all these,
and where was this chapel at again? The location of it?
This chapel is located at the base of a mountain in northern Tucson, Arizona.
Was it pretty close?
81 acres of land.
Was it pretty close to that property that you were taking care of?
Yeah, it's on the property.
It's on the property.
Okay. So it's part of the property. So the property contains a caretaker house, a little house that you can rent, that's rented for people to stay there, and then there's a chapel up on the hill, a tiny little chapel. There's like 4 pews on the left, 4 pews on the right, and then there's this fireplace, a pulpit, and then there's this door on the right. And it's like I said, you couldn't even open the door. There was so much rat shit in there. When we cleaned out all this rat shit, we found all these books, man, like Rosicrucian Cosmo Conception, all these old books, like the list goes on and on. Even the book Cosmic Consciousness that had started me on my journey, I found that there, like an original first edition of it. So anyways, I had boxed up all these books and I had them in the property. So when I had declined my position, I took all these books home with me because I wanted to read them. And so I had them in the room for a while. And then my girlfriend said, she said that they were giving her a headache. And I'm like, well, they're full of rat shit. I should probably take them outside. So I put them outside. And then I took a nap by the damn books outside. And I got a splitting headache. And then she came outside to hang out with me, and I kicked the dog's water bowl on her feet for no reason. And she said, Chris, what the hell are you doing? And I dogged her like it was weird. And she said, Chris, you look like you have the devil in you. You sleep outside. And she locked me outside. And I had slept outside on the concrete, dude. The next morning I woke up, went inside, and I was sitting at the kitchen table. This is
so trippy, man. You realize, first and foremost, there's parts of this story you're telling now that I haven't heard before. I said a lot, a lot of these details I haven't heard. So, yeah, keep going, man. Sorry.
So you're good. So this part right here has been the hardest part, I think, to deal with, because it put a lot of strain on the people around me. So I go into the house after sleeping on the concrete outside. And I'm sitting there with my daughter on the right, my girlfriend on the left. There's breakfast. And we're trying to forget what happened last night. And I see this pencil sitting on the kitchen table. And I was envisioning taking that pencil and slitting my throat from ear to ear. And then I envisioned myself stabbing myself in the heart with it. And there's no reason at this point in my life for me to be suicidal. So these thoughts are not mine. My left hand grabs this pencil and tries to thrust it inside him right directly into my heart. My right hand then goes to fight my left hand. And I'm having this battle in front of my family with this pencil. My girlfriend takes my daughter. They leave the room. They leave the house. I'm freaking out after, after a minute or two, drop the pencil, and I'm like crying, figuring out what the hell is going on with me. I called my what happened first? I called the Veterans Crisis Line, and they put me on hold. And so I got mad, and I hung up. Then I called my cousin. He's 12 years older than me. He's a paramedic, firefighter. So I thought I'd call him. He'd give me some good advice. But I told him, hey, cuz, I told him that I called the VA crisis line because I was feeling suicidal and that these thoughts weren't mine. And he said, well, try calling them again. He wasn't in town. He couldn't come over and help me. So I hung up with my cousin. I didn't want to call the VA back, so I called my mom. I also didn't want to worry my mom, so I just told her I wanted to talk. She was busy at work. Well, I should have known that my cousin was going to call my mom. My cousin called my mom and said, you need to go and take care of Chris because he might hurt himself. So my mom couldn't get there right away, so she calls the police. So
oh, no.
All of a sudden, the police are knocking at my door, dude. And I'm like so anti-police as it is. I'm like, I'm fine. Leave me alone. These police would not go away. They're like on a welfare check. So I just kept telling them I'm fine, having a bad day, like yelling through the door. Finally, for some reason, I agreed to meet them outside by the fence. And this fence is like 4-foot fence. It's 4 feet. There's a gate. So it's, I'm looking at these two cops through this, they're in my carport and I'm in my backyard on the side yard and they're trying to talk me down. And I had enough of them trying to talk me down that I looked at the Mexican cop and I looked at his badge and I said, hey, Morales, have you ever used that pistol before? And he just shook his head no at me. And I said, because you're going to have to use it today, buddy. I'm coming after it. And he said, don't. And like in a split second, Joe, I jumped over that 4-foot gate, put my left hand on this pistol, and his partner like tackled me. And before I knew it, I was in handcuffs and they dragged me out into the street. Meanwhile, I'm spitting on these cops' faces, like wishing death upon their family members. I'm like losing my mind. They dragged me out into the street. A couple more cops came. Fire trucks came. Ambulance came. Then they took me to the Center for Crisis Rehabilitation, like the crazy house, dude. And I had to sleep under a white sheet for a whole night. And the next day I woke up and I had an interview with a psychiatrist. And the lady said, you're clearly fine. You were just having a bad day. They cut me loose. I go home and the first thing I did, was like, go ahead. I'll let you interject.
I'm sorry. That's just funny to me. Like you're just having a bad day. If you tell somebody, look, I tried to stab myself with a pencil. I've freaked out on my family, which is something I don't do. I've tried to get a gun from a cop. I told him that he was going to have to kill me with it. And you're telling me, no, I was just having a bad day.
Yeah, they let me go. They didn't issue me any drugs or anything. The lady doctor said, you must have been just having a bad day. So anyways, yeah, dude, I know I mean,
Wow.
because I'm going through, child custody issues all the while, business is struggling, financial problems, I was having a bad day. I snapped. She let me go. But when I got to the house, the first thing I did was I called the caretaker, Amy. I called her and I said, Amy, what the hell is up with that place? And because I knew this was all connected, and she said, Chris, I'm so sorry. She said, I should have told you. She said, but my husband told me never to tell anybody because we would never be able to rent that chapel for weddings and memorials if people knew the truth. She said there was a murder-suicide in there back in the 60s. You can look it up, and that's all I'm telling you. So I looked it up, and I found an article from back in 1969 that said a couple from Gardenia, California, went there on September. They left their daughter and they sent her on a plane to be with her grandma in Kansas City. They flew out to Tucson, Arizona. They had dinner at Little Abner's, a steakhouse up there by this spot that's still there today. This restaurant is still there today. They ate there, had a steak dinner. They were dressed in all black. The waitress said that they had a canteen, and they kept that canteen close by. Then they went up there into that chapel, and the dude gave the lady was stripped down naked. She drank a poison that was in that canteen, and then he shot himself with a pistol. And the first caretaker of the property, found him there the next morning. And so,
But this is the same chapel that had all of the books that you found
yes,
in them, right?
yes. And so, Joe, when my stomach knotted up, that was Tanya Sue Martin reliving her last moments through me when she drank the poison. And then when I was trying to stab myself, and trying to grab that gun from the cop, that was Melvin Martin. They were both 24 years old, and they suicided themselves in that chapel. Well, I have a buddy that killed himself, and he's stuck in his house. And I read in one of the books that I got from that chapel, The Rosicrucian Cosmo Conception by Max Heindel, that when you suicide yourself, it's like breaking a contract and you get stuck there. And so that's exactly what I experienced with those ghosts up in that chapel. Also, while I was out hiking around, I found this really pretty circle of rocks with 2 lawn chairs next to it. And I thought that circle of rocks was so pretty that the 2 rocks that were the prettiest just happened to be on the north and just happened to be on the west. And I took those 2 rocks, put one of them by the front door because it was so beautiful, and I put the other one by the fireplace. I didn't know that I actually, until I read these books, that there's this whole ritual magic thing, which is why when I met you, I was so stoked because you know about all this shit.
You broke someone's circle, man.
Dude.
Yeah.
I broke a circle and released an entity that kept coming into my house. So that's what that was all about.
You think it was that shadow thing? The black shadowy thing?
Yeah, I know it was.
Jesus Christ, man.
100%.
So when you were trying to stab yourself, when you lost your mind, man, when you read the news article about the couple that killed themselves, was there any backstory to this two? Like, were they a part of a cult? Were they crazy? Like, what?
Dude, that's a great question, and I've come to a dead end. I mean, I live now in Southern California. I mean, I've even thought about going to Gardenia and seeing if I can find anybody that knows, who these people were. All I know is that I know their names. I know where they came from. I know they had a daughter that they sent to their grandma in Kansas City. I mean, I've looked through the books. There's some names There's some books with the names in them. I've like tried to look up names. I have tried to find a backstory as to why those people were drawn there, of all places, from California to go kill themselves in this chapel. Like, I don't know if they had been there before. I don't know if they were called there by some entity the same way I was called there, because I've come to the conclusion that I've been communicating with my higher guardian angel.
Well, some people might come to the conclusion that those occult books that you found by Max Heindel and all those books inside this chapel, that they might say that the books were evil, right? But you went through all the books, right? Like, there's no evil occult books in there, so to speak, right? Like, no, satanic books or books about dark things that you found.
No,
right?
There's not. I've picked through every single book a handful of times because I've moved a handful of times. You know how hard it is to move when you've got 600 books? I know every book that I have. When I moved out here to California, I was missing like 5 books, and I knew it. And I finally found them. But, yeah, I know every book that I have, and they're mostly Christ-related. A lot about, there's a lot. They're very Christian.
Sure. They're Rosicrucian. A lot of Rosicrucian texts are Christian. They're esoteric Christian books. A lot of them.
That's what it is. Yeah. Mystic Christianity, esoteric Christian way of mysticism. I'm looking at them right now. There's a lot of, and then there's some Alice Bailey. There's some racist Aldous Huxley.
Right. Forgive me, bro. I'm not feeling so well. This story is so important because I want everybody to understand that one of the things that happens when you go on like these spiritual journeys, when you start following your heart and you start listening to your intuition and your inner guides, is things like this are going to happen at some point. It seemed to have happened pretty fast for you. I mean, there's still a lot of unanswered questions, but at the same time, it's like this didn't stop, right? Like things kept happening to you afterwards, right?
Yes, this just opened the door to so much greater opportunity. I mean, my life is completely 180 from where I was. I would say I'm way less materialist. I care more about helping other people and living an authentic life. I believe in karma. I believe in past lives. I believe that there's more after death, and that's why all this matters. There's so much more. I've started to remember things from my past, Joe, that I buried because they didn't make sense to me in the material world. When you're going to school and trying to fit in, I play football and, I'm in the Marines.
You were living a regular life before like all this happened, huh?
Pretty regular life. With the exception of going into the Marine Corps, there's a great initiation that happens there that I've started to recognize only now, that the Marine Corps specifically puts you through a 3-day and 3-night initiation at the end of boot camp, where they basically bring you to the brink of death, and then they rebirth you with the warrior's breakfast. You don't eat, you don't sleep, you travel nearly 70 miles with about 100 pounds of gear. And it truly is an initiation that teaches you mind over matter. But I didn't realize that. Most Marines don't realize that's what they're learning at that time.
Your old self is dying and you're being reborn as a Marine. A lean, mean, fighting machine. Right?
Right. And so now, I've let go of that identity. I can't forget all that, especially where I live now. I probably go into a Marine's house at least once a day, if not every other day. I live in a town where Marine Corps base is right there, and Marines retire here by the ocean. They love it. So but I'm like peace first. I anti-war. I'm all love now, Joe. So
Right.
but what I've realized in my HVAC career, because I continue to do a day job, I'm still an HVAC guy. I go into 1,000 houses a year. That I've awakened some extra sensory perception that was there when I was a child. Like I said, when you live a normal life, you forget all these things. But when I was a kid, I used to astral travel. I used to pop off the couch and go spy on my mom and my grandma and other people's in other rooms. And I thought everybody could do this. I popped outside of the car on a vacation, and then I saw myself sitting there, and it freaked me out. I snapped back in. But I thought everybody could do this, and then I just forgot about it. I've had reoccurring dreams, shared dreams about past lives, and all that stuff I didn't realize until I had this. It all started, like you said, with this meditation. I really think, the way a lot of people describe it is it's a Kundalini awakening. It's initiation. It's opening the third eye. There's different ways that this can happen to you. People have near-death experiences. That happened to me too. I drowned in the Marine Corps boot camp in the pool. I was out for 4 minutes, and I watched myself as a little kid at my birthday party with my mom. Like I was reliving my whole life as a child while I was out. I've come to realize that can pop somebody's cherry, their Kundalini cherry.
Their Kundalini cherry? Yeah, I gotcha.
Yeah. It's never an easy process. It was very painful. My family, shunned me. Everybody thought I was going crazy. You lose all your friends. But at the same time, you start to believe and you start to realize that anything is possible. I went from living in a shed in the back of my mom's house to living out here by the beach, sort of living my dream, doing pretty good.
And this is how you and I kind of became friends too, because I've experienced, kind of the same things. Like I'm back in the shack, but I went from a shack to the beach, following my heart, and lots of synchronicities. Except I find your story super fascinating. And we got to take a short break, but I want to get into kind of what happened afterwards, because I know there's more to it, and then
yep.
And then kind of talk about there's still a lot of questions, obviously, right? When it goes back to this place, like the couple that killed themselves and all of this, but it's fascinating stuff, brother. This is how big of a story is it? Do you think you can tell all this story? Like, there's no way to tell the whole story in like just 2 hours, is there? Not really.
Yeah, I think so. I usually can. So I appreciate the opportunity to tell it, dude, because I've only had a handful of opportunities to tell it, but it usually takes me about an hour and a half, 2 hours to get through. Yeah, I'm excited and anxious to tell you some things that some people have never heard. And obviously you said you've already heard elements that you didn't remember. So
yeah, that's yeah, there's some stuff in here that's like, this is the same reason why I tell everybody, like, these big profound things, whether it's books, audio books, even people's stories. Like, sometimes you need to hear them again and again and again, because it starts to unlock certain things. At the same time, before we take a break, I'll tell you guys that's the reason why you need to keep a dream journal too, because when you think you've got something figured out and understood, when you go back to it again and again and again, and it begins to unlock deeper things and deeper messages that were in these conscious messages that are in your personal field of consciousness. So we'll be right back. Stay with us with Coach Chris.
you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from TalkStream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now, the Paranormal Radio app, free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
What I know about courage, I learned from my adoptive mom. She said sometimes you just gotta hold on and know we'll get through this. Mom, we are so high up. Hold my hand.
No, you hold my hand.
Here we go.
Learn about adopting a teen from foster care. You can't imagine the reward. Visit adoptuskids.org to find out more.
I learned patience from my adoptive dad. All he had to say was,
"Hey, you got this. Just breathe." Hey, we're pretty good.
yeah,
Might have to start a band.
I got it.
Learn about adopting a teen from foster care. You can't imagine the reward. Visit adoptuskids.org to find out more. This message is brought to you by Adopt US Kids, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, and the Ad Council.
My mother was always very active and independent, and she was familiar with her neighborhood. But one day, she stopped at the stop sign for much longer than usual. She wasn't even really sure where she was at.
It's important for you to talk to someone about it. I felt so much better after my son told me, "Mom, we'll figure it out."
When something feels different, it could be Alzheimer's. Now is the time to talk. Visit alz.org/ourstories to learn more.
Have you ever wondered, what do the stars say for me? Or, will the next month or the next year be more favorable? How about, are our two signs compatible? Each month, at the new moon, you can ask these questions live with me, your astrologer psychic, Mary DeCina, along with host of Lighting the Void, Joe Root. Join us at the new moon for Cosmic Conditions. We look forward to working with your energy.
Every new moon at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Eastern, right here on Fringe FM.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7 with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
Broadcasting from Forest Tower Studios, all the way from the Deep South. Now, here is your host, Joe Root.
Well, if you guys are listening to this story into the late night here with us, I'm glad you're here with me, because this is an intense one. Coach Chris is here with us, and hopefully we can have him on the show more often, because there's a lot to this story and what's going on with Chris. Listen, guys, if you can, those of you that have supported the broadcast, I really appreciate it. I mean, we're all going through this winter thing, and the more people I talk to, everybody's everybody's going through a rebirth, or especially like financially and stuff. So I get it. So if you can't, I totally get it. But if you can, we really do need it. Like, if you can, please support the broadcast. Their links are down they're in the description. And if you have no idea how much of a help you've been. No idea. And how super grateful that we are that you have. All right, so Coach Chris is here with us tonight, and what a crazy, profound, amazing story. Also, that you started out with the meditating, just following your heart, following the synchronicities. It led you to all of these things, and now you have, you faced this thing. You ever question about like why? Like, I imagine it's trippy because it's so exciting following your heart in the beginning, and all of these cool things start happening, and then the next thing you know, you're facing dark stuff. Did you ever think about like why did that happen? Why did it? Or do you have the answers now to why you had to face these dark things?
I never really asked why. It was so much of a roller coaster. It wasn't fun at all. It was terrifying to follow something that I was questioning whether I was crazy or not. It's like, and people around me thought I was crazy. My mom thought I was crazy. You mentioned, that people might come to the conclusion that the books were, holding something evil. And my mom very much thought that they were. One day I came home and there was a deacon, a Catholic deacon sitting. Okay, so I was raised Catholic. And then I went into the Marine Corps and I sort of left organized religion. My corporal took me to a Baptist church, and I was in a group home that sent me to the Seventh-day Adventists, and my dad was Jehovah's Witness. So there's the background. But I came home and this Catholic deacon was sitting there on the couch. My mom had called this Catholic deacon because he was the only one authorized by the Vatican in the state of Arizona to perform exorcisms, dude. My mom thought I was possessed. So she like cornered me. She just invited me over.
So someone tried to exorcise you, bro?
He didn't, because he like asked me questions, and I told him, I gave him all the answers. I was up front with him. He did tell me to burn the books, and that kind of pissed me off. It irritated me, and I was like offended, because I was like, what do you mean burn the books? Like, I immediately just was reminded about book burning. I'm like, come on, dude. I'm not going to burn the books. And he's like, he said, if you don't burn the books, you'll never see me again. And I really didn't care. My mom tried to steal the books and throw them away. I recovered them all. She and I have come to terms with the fact that they're not evil. But the reason I'm saying this is because it was very stressful on my family and everybody as I was going through this, because they thought I was losing my mind. Nobody supported me in my journey to figure out what this transformation was. So in that book, Cosmic Consciousness, the author, Richard Buck, I don't know how you pronounce his last name, it's Bucke. The author writes about this topic. This was one of the books that, this whole thing came to fruition. He talks about this topic of cosmic consciousness, where like you just tap in to, say, the Akashic or the astral realm, or like this all-knowing that's in the ether, and you can communicate with other people through telekinesis and or clairvoyance. And that's where all these things come from. Prophecy and all these things that people have achieved, like Jesus and Buddha. This author writes about, but he also breaks it down to the average man and just says that men, on average, go through a cosmic consciousness between the age of 30 and 36.
Right. I definitely did. So he's right about that, actually.
And this all happened to me on my 36th birthday. So I just think, this was my health just happened to be good at the time because I had a health scare and I went on this fast and I lost a bunch of weight and was jogging and eating like a rabbit. So then I started meditating and it all worked out. And if someone's looking to have that type of experience, I think the whole idea of mind, body, soul that the doctor had, you got to have all the pieces in place. So I didn't want it though. Actually, these extrasensory perceptions started to become a nuisance, so much so that I tried to bury them, turn them off by binge drinking. I wanted to dumb down my consciousness because as an HVAC tech, I walk into so many people's houses and I didn't learn anything about protections. And so I was just an open conduit, open channel for whatever I would walk into. And a few times, things happened that wrecked me, and I just wanted it to be over with. What I mean by wrecked, emotionally and physically would drain me. But as I'm sort of coming to terms with all this, I was helping people because I would go to people's houses to do their heat check or their air conditioning check. But then all of a sudden, I would pick up on some spirit that was stuck or in transition, and I would have I get this feeling inside right where my spleen is. It's like a vibration, and it radiates throughout my body, and it's warm and fuzzy if it's a loving spirit, and it's painful if it's not. And it'll light up like a light bulb for yes, and then there's no response for no. So I can sort of communicate that way. I get vision sometimes from an entity. One specific time I walked into a house and a candle lit because a dead girl manifested herself in it. As I was just there to service this lady's air conditioning system, I felt this overwhelming feeling of love, and I brought it up. And next thing you know, candles lit, the grandfather clock opened, and this type of thing just would continue to happen to me. And I would communicate with people's dead mothers or lost brothers or lost wives. And it drains me physically. And so I learned from the great community that I've met, where I met you, from some people, that, there's protections, there's ways to manage the situation. I finally wrote about it, sent it in to, a podcast, and went to an event. That's where I met you, Joe. And besides you and a handful of people, there's not a lot of support from my past community. The people I grew up with would never understand this. My closest relatives don't quite get it, but they're coming to terms with it. But I've completely relocated. I have a completely new group of friends that get me, understand me, and it's good. It's been part of the growth phase, is owning who you are. And
it can be isolating, though, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes it can feel isolating.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it feels isolating because I still love my family. I still get up and do my day job every day, and because I've got kids, and I want to make them proud. But my true self is who I've grown into, serving others and striving to do the best for myself at the same time, striving for mutual benefits for everyone I interact with.
Was there ever a time? So when you go back to this place, where you were following this journey, what do you think was the pivot point where it felt like these things started being unlocked for you? Was it the crystal arrowhead? Was it the books? Was it, or do you even know like when it all kind of transitioned for you? What does your intuition tell you?
The pivot point? You said a pivot point?
Right.
The pivot point was letting go of doubt. Because I at first didn't want to take the risk to follow my heart and intuition. It seems really scary. But it's allowed me to have such a greater journey. It's opened my world to so much more. I mean, the pivot point was trusting my intuition, trusting my gut. That's the best advice that I can give to anybody, adult or young adult, that I come across, is to follow your heart, to trust your gut. So when I was hearing voices, you don't tell people you're hearing voices; they're going to judge you. But I could feel the difference between that entity that was not positive and something that was loving and supporting.
Yeah.
And so some of the pushback I get from people is they'll say, you don't know what you're messing with, or, there's tricksters, and, Well,
I wonder what you think. I wonder what was really going on at this place. The more I think about it, based on everything that you're telling me, it almost seems as if it was like maybe an esoteric or occult society met up there and did certain things. Why would all those books be buried in in that chapel? And why would there's so much energy there where this stuff would happen? I wonder how old it is.
I agree. It's a mystery. It's a great mystery that I haven't let go of. I found a magic wand out there, and I call it a magic wand because I don't know what else to call it. It's a double-headed amethyst fixed with sap to a copper pipe that's filled with corn, and then it has copper wires wrapped around in the shape of an alpha and omega.
Really?
Yeah, I found it out there, hiking on this property in the desert, and I have it. And so there's a circle out there. There's these 2 lawn chairs by this circle, and there's a wand and like all these books. Like you said, clearly some weird shit was going on out there. I don't really know if it's still going on. There's a lot of unanswered questions, like you said.
And so when you left that place, when was is there anything else that we're missing at this place before we move on in the story?
Okay, so I left shortly after that Easter sunrise mass, so that would have been by May of 2017. I was gone. They shut the place down for a few months, they found a new caretaker. So I kept the keys. They allowed me to keep the keys as a caretaker off-site. I still have keys. I can still go there and access the property. I still have keys. But they found another caretaker, a Native American, that was only there for a few weeks, and then he left without word. He just up and left. And I am of the opinion that he experienced something similar to what I experienced and probably couldn't handle it and just bounced.
Yeah.
After that, they found an elderly couple that is still there to this day. So when I go there, I'm sort of curious as to if they are aware or complacent, ignorant. I have no idea, but the place is still there. Anybody can go on Airbnb and stay at the cottage for a few $100 a night. You can go there and hike. It's a weird place. People go take pictures there. They get married there. They have funeral services there. One other thing that I sometimes forget and I like to bring up because it's weird, or there are a couple things. So when I moved in, there was a picture of a snake, of a rattlesnake, on the refrigerator, like with a magnet. You know how you put stuff on your fridge with a magnet?
Right.
Well, there's a picture of a rattlesnake on the fridge, right? So there was also furniture. Like when I moved into the caretaker's house, there was furniture. There was stuff there, you know. I didn't have to really bring anything. So but the snake picture on the fridge was weird to me, so I put it in a drawer, in the junk drawer in the kitchen. But since this caretaker's house didn't belong to me, there would be a board meeting there, and there was a board meeting that I had to host one time. And so all the members of the board came, and the president, who had asked me during my interview if I was afraid of the dark, and she had been the caretaker there for 30 plus years, she said, where's our picture? And I go, what picture? She goes, the snake. And I go, oh, it's in this drawer. She took it out of the drawer and put it back on the refrigerator.
Huh.
And also there was this big black bug that would always tap at the front window, like the size of a ping pong ball. I thought it was like a bee or a beetle, or I didn't really know what type of bug it was, but it was huge, about the size of a ping pong ball, and it would bang on this front window like it was trying to come in. And the other lady who had been on the board for ages, who had told me about Stephen Hawking being there, she saw the bug and goes, oh, there's my old friend. And I didn't really put much to that either until recently, and I'm like investigating this mystery. And dude, bugs don't last longer than a year. Bugs die. Like, bugs don't live forever. So what the hell do you mean there's my old friend? And why does this lady care about the snake being on the fridge? And so it was just all really weird to me, man. Like, Beelzebub shows up as a big black beetle, apparently, and I've read that in some fucking weird books. So I don't know.
The beetle's also an
Egyptian
symbol too, you know. So yeah, how many books did you?
They might be some weirdos, man. They might be some weirdos.
How many books did you recover? A lot of people are talking about the books in the chat. They're like, tell them to send me the books and the books. But I think people are curious as to
it's a big part of what's next, I believe, because there's about 600 books, and I can't read them all. It's impossible. I've given away some books to people randomly. I don't regret it. Sometimes I'll grab a book with my intuition, and I'll get a message exactly when I need to get it. I'll get the growth knowledge or wisdom that I need right at that moment. But the fact is, I would like to share these books because I have no intention of being selfish with them. I have like a cupboard with doors, like a bookshelf that has doors on it. And I have probably 20 books in there that I won't let go, but I've thought about putting them up, in like a bookstore and calling it like Treasure Chest Books and just selling them. Or
yeah, well, the thing is you might have some rare prints there too. Like a lot of the text, even occult text, if you have first prints or rare prints, sometimes they're worth a lot of money too. So people, and depending on how well they're taken care of, but either way,
that's the thing. I mean, they're not in excellent condition; they're in good condition. I mean, only a few of the books got chewed up by rats. But there are a lot of first editions. Like some of these Heindel books I have, the people at the fellowship today were shocked that I have those books because they're different. Yeah, they're first editions. So I gotta tell you, like, one of the biggest synchronicities too that unfolded out of this was through these books. Certain books have basically popped off the shelf, so to speak, and given me so much for my growth. And what really spoke to me was these Heindel books, these Rosicrucian Cosmoconception books. I read through them more than once, and I was like, went online and was buying old copies and ordering as many copies as I could because this literature was really speaking to me because it answered questions that I had that were never answered before. Like it talks about what happens when you drown, about how you'll sort of relive your past, your beginning years. Like you watch your life like a movie. That's what happened to me. And I read that in this book. I read about being stuck when you suicide yourself. Like that's what I was experiencing. So these books were so valuable to me that at one point in my life when I was struggling, in 2022, after I had met you, we had our conference, but I go home and I'm still living in the back of my mom's house, and I'm struggling. And so I start talking to Max Heindel. I open this book up and I start talking to him, and I'm like asking for help. And next thing you know, I get a job offer, and the job offer is in the city where the Heindel Fellowship is. So right. I live in Oceanside now, California. I live, right by the Rosicrucian Fellowship. So I've since moved out here. I've gone to the fellowship. There are a bunch of weirdos in there. I don't really like the place, but it's opened me up.
I appreciate your honesty,
it's opened me up to so much more.
A lot of people wonder about occult societies and groups, and should you go to these places? And I've found too, with myself, even in magic societies, that I don't really relate to those people. I'm just saying, I believe what they all believe. I
didn't find a good community there.
But I haven't found, I don't know, man. I found my people with you guys, and you guys are the people that, continue to ask questions, right? I don't know. It's weird. I don't think a lot of people know this, but in the occult world, when you join societies or you go into societal groups, and I don't think it's all like this, but a lot of times it never feels like it feels when you're on your own personal journey, if that makes sense, right? It doesn't feel.
It does make sense.
It doesn't feel the same,
That was my experience.
Although I would like to visit the Philosophical Research Society, even though that's not really a Rosicrucian society, but we kind of all know what Manly P. Hall believed, What? So my question too is that smell that you kept smelling. What do you think that was? That smell that you're like, man, you were trying to get rid of that smell, cover it up, or whatever it was. Did you ever come to find out what that was, or what do you think it was?
Yes, I've come to the conclusion that was this dark entity. I could smell it. It smelled like death. So another way I can validate this, in one time I'm doing HVAC. I have this friend. I sold her an air conditioner, and then she had a divorce, and then she moved to another house, and she was in a new relationship. She got remarried, and she needed to buy a new air conditioner at the new house. So I show up. I had known her, for years or whatever. But now I'm seeing her after all the shit has happened to me. And she comes to the door, and I smelled roses, dude. And I felt like this loving presence as soon as she opened the door. And I go, I don't mean to sound weird, but there's angels with you right now. Like, I just told her this, and then she went on to tell me that she had been diagnosed with breast cancer, and that she had this experience where she saw the Virgin Mary and she smelled roses, and she started to tell me all this shit. So I bring up that to say that this smell, I believe that entities can have an odor, like a good smell or a bad smell. And so that smell of death that I kept smelling, that I thought was a dead rat, that was this dark entity manifesting itself. I saw it. I smelt it. I felt it. I heard it outside. It's, screech in my ear. So,
well, then you see, like the night before last, I was talking about following your own intuition. Like, that's how we develop our gifts of what we call psychic or psychism, is trying to tap into that intuitive side. And when you were following that journey into that place, that's exactly what you were doing, man. And now, what's going on? You're still able to tap into this, I guess, this world, right? This world of spirits.
Yes. I wasn't able to turn it off, and it's almost been 10 years. So that started in 2016. Here we are, 2025. Almost been 10 years. It's going to be 9 years this August, and it's only been after finding a community of like-minded individuals like yourself. I won't name anybody's names just to protect people's identities, but people have helped me to accept and grow into these abilities. So, how much time we got here? So I went to the VA a couple years ago, and this lady was standing by my truck looking at all the stickers on my tailgate, and I walked up to her, and she's like, "Oh, is this your truck?" I said, "Yeah." She goes, "Oh, you must be a Marine then," because I had this Marine veteran sticker on the tailgate. And she said, "I love Marines. I was a nurse in Vietnam and lost, but also saved many Marines." And she said, "Can I hug you?" And I said, "Sure." So I gave her a big hug, and I walked her to her car, and I helped her get into her truck. Actually, this big, huge truck. Helped her get in, gave her another hug. And when I was hugging her, I noticed in the back seat, it looked like a dead dog. I didn't say nothing.
Yeah.
And she got out, of the truck after I got her in there, and she said, "I need to show you something and give you something." And she walked around to the passenger side. She pulled out that dead dog-looking thing, which ended up being a coyote that she had turned into a medicine bag.
What?
And she set that to the side, and then she pulls out this stick that's all twisted, and she said, "This is a prayer stick." And she said, "I'm a Lakota shaman, and this prayer stick has been through." She mentioned like these 3 different prayer circles and ceremonies, and she started naming all these chiefs that have put their spirit into this prayer stick. And she said, "I'm going to give it to you." And she puts her arms out, and I put my hand on this stick, and right when I grabbed this prayer stick, like we both felt this jolt of energy, like almost knock us both back. And we looked at each other, and like I made eye contact, and she said, "You have to come home with me." And I said, "Okay." And then so I get in her truck, and she says, "I don't usually bring strange men home, I promise you." She said, "But something is happening here." She said, "I'm dying." She said, "My children want nothing to do with my practice or anything that I have to share with them." She said, "I'm going to share with you and train you and give you what I know." And she went on to tell me how she was a Lakota shaman that they call her Red Feather. She gave me her whole back history. I spent the next couple of months with her and was able to open up with her, tell her about how I basically experienced ghosts. And she helped me to understand it in her way. Working at a Buddhist temple in Tucson through HVAC, I had the master there take me under her wing. I opened up to her. She helped me understand it. So I've basically had different people help me along this way to understand that, it's a gift. I'm not special. Lots of people have it, and lots of people can unlock it. Lots of people have different gifts. And then I've thought for a while, like, what am I supposed to do with it? Do I I wanted to shut it off because I mentioned it's exhausting. It wears me out. And I pray about it. Most recently, my prayer, I got a scripture, Corinthians 12:10, which is my birthday backwards, 10:12:12:10, and it talks about these 7 gifts of the Holy Spirit, one of them being discerning of spirits, and that these gifts are supposed to be shared with people. So that's what I'm ready to do. I'm ready to help people. I'm helping people when it comes up as I enter their house for HVAC, and for now, I'm going to keep doing my day job and slowly transition into something greater.
And that's what your heart's telling you to do, right?
My heart, God, every time I doubt it, I get slapped up the side of the face with some other synchronicity that reminds me.
Do you think that the experiences that happened at this place, were so deep that and I don't know how to say this, did they traumatize you in a sense? The way you were not traumatized, you're permanently traumatized, because you don't sound like that at all. But at the time, do you think that they did?
Yeah,
it was just hard to accept all this stuff.
It was very hard. It sucked. It was very traumatic. I had never been that scared. Never been that scared. Tears were coming out of my eyes.
Yeah.
Well, I have these sketches of what I saw, and when I look at them, it still gives me the creeps.
Yeah, I'd definitely like to see that sketch sometime, man. And the reason why I say all that is it's important for us to discern, fact from fiction when we're studying these things and the truth of things. And there's so many people nowadays claiming to be this or that. And I know that that makes it hard for you to even open up? Because I remember when just recently, actually, you opened up to me about it, and it was hard for you to say it. Like, listen, man, I I think that this is what's going on with me. And when I hear your story, I'm like, yeah, that's definitely what's going on with you, right? Like, you're definitely some type of medium. That's definitely what's happening. Versus other people that I've spoken with are just like, yeah, I'm a medium and this and that. And I can just sense a level of BS with it, right? A lot of times. And maybe it's just because I personally know you, but I can tell that it hasn't been easy for you to open up and even admit this to yourself, in a sense. I could be wrong, but that's what I'm picking up. It's been a difficult journey as far as you being able to open up and say, this is what I am. This is my gift, You
hit the nail on the head, because I grew up not believing that was a possibility. I sort of thought all psychics or mediums were full of shit. And now I feel like I have a pretty good radar of who's telling the truth and who's not. Like, now I can just tell. Yeah. But it was very hard for me to say, oh, I'm a medium. Like, it feels weird. Like, I didn't even think in a million years I would have never ever thought that. It's just not in the playbook. And but here I am.
So how often do you pick up on stuff like this on a day-to-day basis?
It doesn't happen every day, but I would say on average at least once a week or once every other week. Because, based on the volume of houses I'm visiting right now, it's a little bit slow. So, the most recent thing happened a couple weeks ago, but when I'm visiting 4 or 5 people a day, it might be once a week. And so it's interesting. I think that people like, I don't know, I didn't choose the job chose me. It put me in this position to be able to serve people in this way. Like, what other job would I be able to visit people in their homes with their ghosts?
Right. And it gives comfort to people. I know you told me, I don't want to tell your stories, but I know you told me a story the other day where a guy's wife had passed away and you started seeing red everywhere, but you said, well, I guess she really liked red or something, right? And he goes, how did you know that? And then he ended up showing you all of like her red stuff, That's pretty trippy, man. That's pretty profound. It's big.
Yeah, when I feel it, I have to say something, and I do now. I'm confident enough to bring it up. If something's physically affecting me, I'll bring it up, and then it never fails. Somebody just died.
Sometimes the people don't even tell you that someone just passed, huh?
Yeah, no, they don't either. They'll just tell me and they'll offer it up, and I'm like, why are they telling me this? They just met me. But more often, I bring up because there's an overwhelming physical effect on my body, and I'll say, wow, there's a loving presence in here. I'll say it feels really, really, really good in here. You got a good energy in here, right around this area, and they'll. So one time, I've already told you the story on a past show, but I told a lady, there's a really powerful energy right there by that couch. She said, my mother just died last week on that couch. And then I started answering yes or no questions with her in the hallway. Weird.
Yeah, that's cool though. It's weird, but it's cool. Because cool. Yeah, it's cool. Like, it's cool, bro. Like, it's cool to know that this stuff's real. Although I would say, I got to tell you, I'm not sure I mean, you were meant to go through this stuff. You were meant to handle this stuff. Even you told me you don't think God gives us things that we can't handle, right? And some of the stuff that you went through, brother, sounds pretty tough, but you handled it. You went through it. And so I consider you, like, in my opinion, like a OG medium. Like you're on a higher level when you're, as far as being able to tap into the intuition than I am on, especially when it comes to these things. You know, the only time I would even see something like that is if I was in an out of body state, and then I got to figure out if I'm projecting it or did I really see that person, you know, versus where you can be in your body and just feel this stuff. And I think it's really cool. I think it's an awesome gift, man. And I know there's a lot more to the story too. And I really appreciate you sharing it with us tonight, man. It was freaking amazing. Thank you.
I appreciate the opportunity. It's not every day that I get the chance to share it because, you know, it's a unique audience that can receive it. Right.
And maybe one day we'll. Now, are you open to, like, if people want to contact you or any of that?
I am. I mean, I don't think anybody will, but of course I am. You can share my email, coachchrisusmc@gmail.com. Feel free to email me. I'll respond. I got an Instagram, Facebook. My Facebook is my name. It's Chris Martinez, and then my Instagram is The Real Chris Style.
So it's Coach Chris USMC@gmail.com.
At Gmail. Yeah.
Brother, I'd love to have you on the show more often. I really would.
I'd be happy to, man. Yeah.
And
be happy.
We got to roll out of here. Hopefully we'll be here tomorrow night, God willing. There's stuff going on, man. I got to get to the doctor, you know, and there's ice all over the ice, dude, out here. I'm jealous that you're out back at the beach in the warm weather, because being back in Arkansas, man, when we get these winter storms, stuff, ice is over. You can't leave your house. It sucks, man, you know. So much love out there to Oceanside too, dude. I wish I was out there with you.
Yeah, I wish you were out here too, man. Yes. Guys, well, stay warm, brother. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. And we'll be back tomorrow night, God willing. And you guys have sweet dreams. Night. Please support the broadcast if you can. We'd much appreciate it. And keep in mind, you can join the Patreon too. You can go to ltvpodcast.shop if you want to support the show. All of there's tons of ways to support. If it's easier just to do it on YouTube, the best way to support, I'm sure Sudi and others would tell you, is there's a tip jar in the description, because we get the funds right away and it can help us disperse them where we need them, because we don't do nothing but play catch up around here, and that's doubly so right now. So thank you all, you guys, for coming out. It means the world that you listen to the show every night with us, and thank you guys for all of your support and love. Good night, y'all. Sweet dreams. Thanks, Chris, brother. That was cool.
Thanks, man.
Mission Control, the Flight Operations Director, commented that he felt like one of the saddest features of our modern world is being a product of rather materialistic civilization.
Emergency! A major catastrophe has occurred.
Was this the future you had in mind for us?
They must be smoky space.
Dust.
They must
be smoky
space.
Dust.